house where people meet from all generations and all culture, all religion, all gender. And today I want to introduce to you Professor Tetyana Arzumanova from Ukraine. She lived in Charkiw and she wants to talk about the war in Ukraine. And after the presentation you have the possibility to ask questions. And the presentation we want to film, just that you know, yeah? And you can see it on YouTube or Facebook.
YouTube.
Okay. So I think you will say some more words to your person, and thank you very much that you are here tonight.
I want to tell thank you to Germany, to all Germans who support Ukraine, who support Ukrainians, to support Ukrainian refugees. Unfortunately, the number of refugees is increasing every day, and as you know, the situation in Ukraine is not so good, and the number of them would be increased. That's why I think you would meet Ukrainians everywhere, and I hope that we would be good neighbors to you, and all our people very, very grateful for you, really, because you save our lives, you support us, and it's very important that you are doing for us. First of all, also I want to tell a lot of thank you for our Julia, because she works in our hostel with me, with all my neighbors in this building, and she supports us and she helps a lot, and also she invite me. It's very, very, it's heartbreaking, really. I don't know how to say, because if I would say, I start to cry. So,
Thank you.
really, I appreciate it a lot. All of you do a lot for us. So today I want to tell you some words about Ukraine. I'm a historian. Ich bin Dozentin von Beruf. Unfortunately, it was in my past life, and I hope that in my new life I would be able to also have lectures, meet with people, to meet my students. I love them a lot, and today you're my students. Thank you a lot that you come, because my last class was in February 23rd, and in February 24th I woke up because my city, Charkiw, it's a border with Russia, the second city, the largest city after Kyiv, after the capital in Ukraine, and unfortunately our city was the first which was conquered by Russian troops. So, as you know, the war started particularly 4 months ago, and to speak about reasons of the war, I want you to tell about the history of this question, because Russia is a state which always want to be as large as possible, and this willing to conquer more and more lands, this ideas was not only ideas of Mr. Putin, the modern president, but also all leaders who lived earlier. And as you see on the map, it's a Russian Empire, territory of Russian Empire in the 19th century, in the beginning of the 20th century. And as you see, Russian Empire, particularly there, it was the territory of Ukraine, but Ukrainians at that time, of course, we didn't have any independence, any sovereignty. Ukrainian lands were a part of Russian Empire. And in 1917, this year, the revolution, February Revolution and then October Revolution took place in Russian Empire, and due to the reasons of the First World War, and some nations, such as Polish people, Finns, they were able to receive independence. So Finland received independence 1917, and Poland also received independence in 1917. Ukrainians also started fighting for their independence, but unfortunately we were not able. Our forces, compared to Russian forces, was, as in our days, smaller. That's why Ukrainians were included in the Soviet Union. And I also mentioned that Finland and Poland received their independence, but they originally these lands were a part of Russian empires. You know, in our days, Poland support Ukrainians a lot because Polish people, they understood that if Russians occupied the territory of Ukraine, Poland would be the next step to Russians, because they would announce that historically this territory was a territory of Russian Empire. Also Finland, as I mentioned, they received their independence, and of course Russia could say that historically these lands were a part of Russian Empire. That's why Finland and, as you remember, Sweden and these countries also could be cut by this state. Also, as I told you, Ukrainian lands in the 20th century became a part of Soviet Union, and there were 15 republics in Soviet Union, and Ukraine was among them. And after the collapse of Soviet Union in 1991, Russians, people of Russia, they were absolutely, how to say, they accept this as a betrayal that people from other republics want to be independent from them, because they proclaim that we are brothers, we are the same, we should be together. Why do you want to live without us? And for Russians it was really a tragedy that such a large state was collapsed, and for them it was really a tragedy, especially in our days. We would speak about propaganda, modern propaganda in Russia, so they say that we should collect all the lands of former Soviet Union and then of former Russian Empire. And it is the main idea in modern Russian society. So, as I told you, on the base of Soviet Union, 15 independent states appeared in 1991, and Ukraine was among them. So we received our independence in 1991, and it was a celebration, because all of Ukrainians were proud that now we could live ourselves without the protection of Red Big Brother, as Russians call themselves. So about our Ukrainian flag, you know, it's the symbols of yellow fields and blue peaceful sky in our state, and now you could see a lot of flags in Germany. So, as I told you, Russians, they were not agree with the collapse of Soviet Union, and especially new leader of Russia, which became a president in the beginning of in 2000, yes, or maybe 2001, I don't remember exactly. So Mr. Putin became a president, and for example, it's Tata in 3 years ago, he in his interview he said that collapse of the Soviet Empire was the greatest geopolitical catastrophe of the century, and since this time he started to plan how to collect these lands back. And also he mentioned that it's really a tragedy for Russians, but how could we explain what is a tragedy for Russians? Maybe only Russians could explain why this was a tragedy. So, as I mentioned, the ideas of collecting lands among Russians early, not even during this war, and they start to do such things. For example, on the territory of former Soviet Union, on the territory of new states, Russian authorities started to support, People Republic. So they invest money in some political parties and start to proclaim Russian-speaking territories. And on the territory of Moldova, as you remember, this state maybe received the status of candidate for European Union membership. So Russians support people who live on the border with Ukraine and Moldova and proclaimed Transnistrian or Pridnestrovyan People Republic. So Russians, they sent military there, Russian troops, Russian army, and so you see that they divided a part of Moldova lands, and this lands they proclaimed as People Republic, but of course nobody in the world doesn't recognize this territory. On this territory we could see now Russian troops, and people who live there, they don't have passports of Moldova or Ukraine, they have passports of this People Republic, and they are absolutely isolated. Without these documents, they couldn't go anywhere, and of course they don't receive any support neither from Moldova nor Ukraine. So they started this ideas of creation of People Republic in Moldova. Next country was Georgia, also a former Republic of Soviet Union. Also, you know that in our days Georgia wants to be a part of European Union, and during this week the destiny of Georgia would be solved. Maybe they would also, along with Ukrainian and Moldova, maybe they would receive the status of candidate for European Union membership. But what did Russia do to Georgia? They also occupied a part of their lands and proclaimed a new Abkhazian Republic, People Republic, and then Ossetian Republic. So you see, these territories also occupied by Russia. So Russian troops are there, and people without any rights live there. So next step was in Ukraine after Revolution of Dignity in 2014. In Ukraine, the main goal of this revolution was caused by elections, and during these elections of president, and pro-Russian president won these elections, and Yanukovych, his name was Viktor Yanukovych, and he refused to join a European Union. And Ukrainians started this rebellion against pro-Russian president, and Russians, of course, they were angry that the candidate didn't have any opportunity to change the direction of our policy from pro-Russian to pro-European. So Russians understood that they lose this game, and they start to move their troops to Crimea. So after this revolution in 2014, Crimea was annexed by Russia, and this territory was included in Russian Federation. Russia is a federation like Germany, so they have subjects of federation, and Crimea received this status as a member of federation. And then they occupied eastern part of Ukraine, Donetsk and Lugansk region, two cities with territory. In Ukraine we use such name Oblast, it's main city, and the territory around, for example, Nuremberg and cities and villages around, it's this Oblast, yes, region. So these territories were occupied by Russians. Russians also came to this territory. Ukrainian army started to fight with them because maybe, of course, if we wouldn't fight, they would conquer Smolensk. But Ukrainian army stopped them and they received only this territory. And Russian authorities, at first they refused that their army was there, but then recognized, and they proclaimed creation of two people republic, Donetsk Republic and Lugansk Republic. As you see, they create the symbols of republic based on history of Russian Empire. As you know, this two heads eagles was the symbol of Russian Empire, and this star is Soviet Union main symbol. So they used even in creation of symbols of these people republics such things. And also, as we know, they create a puppet government which conducts the policy of Russia on these territories. So during this period, from 1914 till these days, we could say that the war between Russia and Ukraine, this war continued. We could say that the stage of this, the military stage of this war was postponed in 2014 and restarted in our days. So, as I mentioned, they occupied Crimea, they occupied eastern part of Ukraine, two regions, and of course they prepared for next step. And this step was made in February this year. So, as I mentioned, in February 24th, Ukrainians woke up because our cities were bombed, and when we switch on our TV or open the internet, the web interview of Vladimir Putin, which was very interesting for us because he proclaimed the main goals of this war. So, what are they? First goal of this war, he proclaimed the process of denazification of Ukrainians. So Putin always compare Ukrainian government and Ukrainians with Germans during the Second World War, and he said that we are fascists, so that we are Nazis, and our president is Hitler, and it's absolutely stupid thing. He compared that, for example, in Germany, Germans killed Jewish people, and we do, according to his ideas, we, Ukrainians, killed Russians, ethnic Russians, and Russian-speaking people. It's absolutely stupid things because, for example, I am a half Russian, my father is ethnic Russian, and we used to speak Russian. Russian is my mother language. Of course, I speak Ukrainian. We are dual. We could speak, people who live in this eastern part of Ukraine and southern part of Ukraine, they prefer to speak Russian as a mother language. And here you could see the number of people in procents who use Russian language. For example, here 96, 94, 84, 97, 94, 91, 87, 96. So you see. Then if we would move to the territory of western part of Ukraine, you would see that number of people who use Russian language as mother language would be, of course, decline. And also, I want to mention that in our days, unfortunately, Ukrainians start to refuse speak Russian because they say that it's language of Putin, of Russians, and as for me as historian, of course, it's very painful page of our history that received opposite result. People who speak Russian, who watch Russian TV, Russian songs, usually used to listen to, and so on, so on. In our days, we start to refuse all Russians. And Russians are enemy for us. It shouldn't be, but unfortunately during the war, in my opinion, unfortunately it is the truth of these days. So, as I mentioned, our president, he is ethnic Jew, and as you see, also I would say that people who are members of our parliament, the parliament, the government are represented by people from different cities with different languages, ethnic groups. They are representatives of different ethnic groups and religions and so on. So Ukraine was absolutely democratic state with variety of religions, languages, and so on and so on. The next goal, demilitarization of Ukraine. So, as I mentioned, the goal was to destroy our army, and also Putin received absolutely different result, because in our days Ukraine started to receive weapons from different countries, first of all from the USA, from Europe, and all these countries gave more and more weapons to Ukrainians. So this goal was also not so easy for Putin. And also he says that Western countries shouldn't help Ukrainians. How to explain this, I don't know. Next, so this is a map, and you could see the first results of the first day of the war. Russians, they came from the territory of Belarus or Belarus on the border, northern border between Ukraine and Ukraine border with Belarus, and Belarus gave opportunity Russian army to conquer northern part of Ukraine. Then here this territory, and also from Crimea they came to southern part, and they occupied a lot of lands immediately, but then they stopped, and Ukrainian army, we might proud of bravery of Ukrainian soldiers, that they start to fight and stop this army. And if we would compare with the map of May, you see that northern part of Ukraine is liberated in our days, but unfortunately eastern part and southern part are still under Russian occupation. And my city Charkiw here, it's absolutely, you see, on the border with Russia. That's why Russians from their territories, they use their weapon and airstrikes and bombing of our city. Unfortunately, wouldn't be stopped, and as I mentioned today, that our local authorities in Charkiw, they ask people to evacuate children from our city now, today. Then, sorry, how to move it? So, also next goal of Russia was preventing expanding of NATO, and the goal was to prevent Ukraine from joining the NATO, but you see that Finland decided to be a member of and Finland and Sweden would be the next members of this treaty organization. And if Finland would join NATO, it means that the border with NATO would be more, because Finland has a border with Russia. And also I could understand the will of people who live in the state, because in 1939, before the Second World War, Soviet Union tried to occupy Finland. As you remember, they received independence from Russian Empire in 1917, and in 1939, Russia, Soviet Union at the time, tried to occupy them again and join to Soviet Union. And imagine that maybe at that time the population of Finland was about 1-2 million. I don't remember exactly, but compared to Russia, they had a very small army, but they were so brave that they protect their lands and they saved their independence. Also, as you remember, Poland, it was also historically Russian Empire lands, and in 1939, Poland was divided between two leaders, two dictators, between Stalin and Hitler, and Soviet Union conquered a great part of Poland. After the Second World War, Poland received their independence, but some territories were still in Soviet Union. So, I'm sorry, I don't know what happened, but it refused to work. So next goal of Mr. Putin was to trail Ukrainian nationalists, but as I mentioned, he received opposite result, and in our days in Ukraine, the process under war criminals started, and Russian soldiers who were captured, they should be imprisoned, and we use them to change Ukrainians who were captured by Russians. It's very important for us, because you know that unfortunately Russians occupied a lot of lands and they captured a lot of people, they took a lot of children even, and they created concentration camps to fight with nationalists. And that's why Russian soldiers very useful for us, because we want to change them and take our people home. And war crimes, unfortunately, next page of this presentation is not very good. It's war crimes which were made by Russians. As you see, it's my city, Charkiw, and one of the buildings, a lot of buildings, I just show you one of them. Imagine that now Charkiw is destroyed, particularly. Then also maybe you remember a very sorry, that's the streets of my city. Charkiw was a very good city, really. I hope it would be rebuilt and it would be even more beautiful, but in our days, unfortunately, we have what we have. And as I mentioned, during the first days of the war, people started to run away from Charkiw, from other cities which were occupied by Russians, and imagine that it was a hell on the earth. Imagine that small trips and millions of people who want to evacuate it, who wanted to be evacuated, and people were not allowed to take bags, because bags could take a place, and instead of luggage, you could take another person. That's why Ukrainians, for example, my daughter and me became just this small bag with our documents. But as I understand, it's not a very big problem. First of all, you should be alive. So people, instead of things, usually they try to take their pets, and you see that page of our history. Very tragic, and unfortunately, I should use maybe. So you see it inside the train. People used to go to the western part of Ukraine. Some of them stayed there, but some of them crossed the border and moved in Poland, then in Germany and other countries, and they tried just to say, because during the first days of the war we didn't know what would be next. What our army compared to Russian army is so small, how would they protect us? We were not so sure that we would stay. And you could see that many people who refused to evacuate it, they continued to live in basements, in their, how to say it in English, keller, you use their keller. And you see that many villages, many cities were totally destroyed. So you can see that in the eastern part of Ukraine, in our days, many small villages, they destroyed totally, absolutely. And people ran away and tried to start new life in other territories. And I am not sure that I could show you such pictures, but maybe this name of the city, Bucha, became very famous due to the atrocities which were made by Russian soldiers. But Bucha is not the only city. Bucha is just one of the cities which were occupied by Russians, and then the cities were liberated. Bucha is not far from Kyiv. As I mentioned, northern part of Ukraine is liberated, and now we could see what happened there. Unfortunately, Russians who came to these territories, they killed a lot of people. They killed them in very strange way. I don't know why, but they use such way. They put their hands behind the back, cross them, and then give a bullet in the head. And for what? Just, I want to know for what. They also took all property and take everything from the flats of people. I can't explain this. Even they took furniture, TV, everything that they could take with them. And also, for example, this picture became very popular in the internet because this woman, she made a manicure, and her body was absolutely destroyed, but due to this manicure she was recognized by her daughter. It's tragedy, but because of the story of one person, people might understand more about the tragedy of the war. All wars are tragedy. That's why I can't believe that it happened now in the 21st century in the middle of Europe. And it happened with my people. So I hope that all soldiers, Russian soldiers who were in Bucha and other cities and who did such terrible things to Ukrainians, I want they to be punished, first of all, because it's absolutely unacceptable in our society, in our time. Once more. So, also the pictures of people, young, small children, young ladies, and people who stay in Charkiw, we have in Charkiw a very big subway metro, and compared to Nuremberg,